The big crystal building floated in space near the planet Zenthar Prime. Inside, 12 alien races sat around a huge table. They were the Galactic Council. They ruled over thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Today they were meeting to talk about humans. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the middle of the room. She was a human woman from Earth. She wore a dark blue uniform with Earth's symbol on it. Around her, the alien council members looked down at her. Some had many eyes. Others had scales or fur. All of them looked at her like she was not important. Sarah spoke with a strong voice. She asked the council to let humanity become a full member. She told them about Earth's achievements. She talked about human science, art, and culture. She explained how humans had learned to travel faster than light only 150 years ago. In that short time, they had built colonies on 10 different worlds. The council members did not seem to care. They whispered to each other. Some made rude sounds. Lord Krathos, the leader of the Vryn Empire, sat at the highest seat. He was tall and covered in purple scales. His 4 eyes glowed red. He was the head of the council's military forces. Lord Krathos raised one clawed hand. The room became quiet. He looked at Sarah and started to laugh. It was a deep, mean laugh. The other council members joined him. He spoke in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. He said humans were babies in the galaxy. He said humanity had only 200 ships. The council had 50,000 ships. He said Earth was weak and small. He told Sarah that humans should be happy the council even allowed them to exist. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her face calm. She told Lord Krathos that humans deserved respect. She said humanity had proven themselves. They had built great things. They had survived wars and disasters on their own world. They were strong. Lord Krathos stopped laughing. His eyes became cold. He said humans would never be equals. Then he made his announcement. He said humanity must give up their outer colonies. He said Earth must accept to be under council control. He called it being a protectorate, but everyone knew what it really meant. It meant slavery. Sarah's hands formed into fists. She asked what would happen if Earth refused. Lord Krathos smiled. It was not a kind smile. He said the council would teach humanity a lesson. He said they would show humans what happened to those who did not obey. Sarah took a deep breath. She looked around at all the alien faces. She saw their pride. She saw their certainty that they were better than humans. Then she spoke clearly so everyone could hear. She said Earth refused. She said humanity would never bow to anyone. She warned them not to make this mistake. She told them they did not understand what humans were capable of when they were threatened. She said they would regret attacking Earth. The council chamber exploded with noise. Aliens shouted and made angry sounds. Lord Krathos stood up. He was twice as tall as Sarah. He pointed at her with his clawed finger. He said humanity had made their choice. Now they would face the consequences. He gave an order right there in the chamber. He told his fleet commander to attack Proxima Station. That was humanity's furthest colony. It was a space station where 12,000 humans lived. They were miners and families. Lord Krathos said to destroy it completely. He wanted to send a message. Sarah's face went pale. She begged them to stop. She said those were innocent people. There were children there. But the council did not care. Lord Krathos waved his hand, and guards came to take Sarah away. As the guards pushed her toward the door, Sarah shouted one last warning. She said they would remember this day. She said they would wish they had listened to her. But the council only laughed. 2 days later, the Vryn fleet arrived at Proxima Station. The people there had no warning. They were just living their normal lives. The Vryn ships opened fire. Their weapons cut through the station's shields like paper. Explosions tore through the metal halls. People tried to run to escape pods, but there was no time. In 15 minutes it was over. Proxima Station broke apart into pieces of burning metal. 12,000 people died. Men, women, children, all gone. The Vryn ships recorded everything and sent the video back to the council. They wanted everyone to see what happened when someone refused the council. The news reached Earth 3 days later. Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Earth's government. Around her, generals and leaders watched the video of Proxima Station's destruction. Some people cried. Others sat in shocked silence. Sarah's hands shook as she watched the children running in the halls before the explosions. The president of Earth turned off the video. He looked around the room at all the faces. He asked if everyone agreed on what they must do. One by one, every person in the room nodded. The decision was the same from everyone. There was only one choice now. The president spoke the word. War. Earth declared war on the Galactic Council. Messages went out to every human colony, every ship, every station. The message was simple. Humanity would never surrender. They would fight back, and the Council would learn that humans were not weak. Sarah stood at the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council was celebrating. They thought they had won. They thought humanity would collapse in fear. But Sarah knew something they did not. She knew about the secrets. She knew what humanity had been building in the shadows. For 150 years, ever since first contact with aliens, Earth's leaders had feared this day. They had hoped for peace, but they had prepared for war. While building their small public fleet of 200 ships, they had been working on something else. Something the Council knew nothing about. Hidden in asteroid belts, behind gas giants, and in the dark spaces between stars, humanity had built secret shipyards. They had created weapons that pushed the limits of science. They had prepared for the day when they would need to defend themselves against a galaxy that saw them as weak. That day had come. The Council expected humanity to beg for mercy within weeks. Instead, they would get something very different. They would get the full strength of human determination. They would learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. Sarah touched the glass of the window. She whispered to herself. She said the Council had made their biggest mistake. They had given humanity no choice but to show them the truth. And the truth was simple. When humans were threatened with extinction, they became the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. After Earth declared war, something strange happened. The galaxy expected to hear screams for help from humanity. They expected to see human ships running away in fear. Instead, they heard nothing. Complete silence. All of humanity's communication channels went dark. No messages came from Earth, no calls for peace, no begging for mercy. The human colony stopped all contact with other species. It was like humanity had simply vanished. Lord Krethos sat in his command ship and waited. He expected Earth to surrender within a week. His intelligence officers told him that human leaders were probably arguing about what to do. They said humanity was probably in chaos. The Vryn Lord smiled. He had won without even fighting a real battle. But in the council chamber, some members were not so sure. The Zethian ambassador, an old creature with silver skin, said the silence worried him. He remembered old Earth military history that he had studied. He said humans were dangerous when they went quiet, but the other council members laughed at him. What could humans possibly do? Deep inside a mountain on Earth, Admiral Marcus Wright stood in a massive command center. Hundreds of people worked at computer stations around him. Giant screens on the walls showed maps of the galaxy. Red dots marked council military positions. Blue dots marked human assets. But most of the blue dots were invisible to the council. They did not know these positions existed. Admiral Wright was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had spent 40 years in Earth's military. For the last 20 years, he had been commander of something the public did not know about. Something called the Hidden Fleet. A young officer brought him a report. She told him that all stealth carriers were in position. All kinetic weapons were armed and ready. All special forces teams had reached their targets. Everything was ready. The admiral nodded. He had been preparing for this moment for 2 decades. Now it was time. He looked at the screens and began to explain the situation to the officers around him. He told them that the council thought humanity only had 200 ships. That was true for the public fleet. But it was a lie for the real fleet. The truth was that humanity had been building in secret for 150 years. He pointed to different areas on the star map. He showed them hidden shipyards and asteroid belts where they built ships in the darkness. He showed them manufacturing stations behind the giant planet Jupiter, where the council's sensors could not see. He showed them bases in deep space far from any star, where humanity had assembled weapons and trained soldiers. The real human fleet was not 200 ships. It was over 8,000 ships. The council had 50,000 ships, so humans were still outnumbered. But the admiral smiled. Numbers were not everything. Humanity had something better. They had surprise, and they had weapons the council had never seen. The admiral began to list the secret projects. First was Project Prometheus. Human scientists had learned how to weaponize stars. They could make a sun shoot out deadly beams of plasma. They had also learned to create tiny black holes that could be used as weapons. Second was Project Valkyrie. These were missiles that could fly at almost the speed of light. When something hit a target while moving that fast, it released incredible energy. A small metal ball moving at near light speed could destroy a battleship. Humanity had built millions of these missiles. Third was Project Ghost Fleet. These were ships with special technology that made them invisible. The Council's sensors could not detect them. The Ghost Fleet could appear right next to an enemy and attack before they knew what was happening. Fourth was Project Darwin. The name came from an old Earth scientist who studied evolution. This project had created super soldiers. These were humans who had been changed with genetics and technology. They were stronger, faster, and smarter than normal humans. They could survive in space without suits for short times. They could teleport short distances. They were the perfect warriors. Fifth was Project Ragnarok. This was the most terrible weapon of all. It was a planet killer. The scientists who built it said it was too horrible to ever use. But the Admiral knew that if humanity was going to die, they would take their enemies with them. He hoped they would never need to use it, but it was ready if they did. The Admiral explained the battle plan. It was simple but bold. They would attack every major Council military base at the same time. 40 different star systems, all in one moment. The Council would never know what hit them. A colonel asked if they were really ready for this. The Admiral looked at him with steady eyes. He said humanity had no choice. The Council had killed 12,000 innocent people. They had declared that humanity must bow or die. There was only one answer to that: fight back with everything they had. He asked if everyone understood their orders. Officers around the room said yes. The Admiral took a deep breath. He gave the command. He said one word: execute. Across the galaxy, human forces moved into position. Ghost Fleet carriers uncloaked in dozens of systems. Super soldiers teleported onto Council stations. Kinetic missiles began their acceleration to near light speed. Computer viruses wormed their way into Council networks. Millions of AI-controlled drones woke up and began flying toward their targets. The Council had no idea what was about to happen. Their military commanders were relaxed. They thought the war was already won. Their ships patrolled in normal formations. Their bases operated with normal security. Everything seemed peaceful. Admiral Wright watched the countdown on his screen. 10 seconds, 9, 8. He thought about the people of Proxima Station. He thought about the children who had died. He thought about Lord Kratos laughing in the Council chamber. The countdown reached 0. Across 40 star systems, humanity struck. The Galactic Council was about to learn a terrible lesson. They were about to discover that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology. It was their absolute determination to survive. When you pushed humans to the edge of extinction, they did not beg. They did not break. They became something terrifying. The galaxy was about to change forever. The age of the Council's easy dominance was over. A new power had emerged from the shadows. And it was angry, very angry. In the command center, alarms began to sound as the first battle reports came in. Officers shouted updates. Screens filled with data. The Admiral stood in the center of it all, calm and focused. The war had truly begun, and humanity would show the galaxy what it meant to make an enemy of Earth. The Vryn Second Fleet was the pride of Lord Kratos. 8,000 warships patrolled the border between Council space and human territory. The ships were massive and powerful. Their commanders were confident. They believed no force could challenge them. Commander Zalthor sat on the bridge of his flagship. He was drinking a hot beverage and reading reports. Everything was normal. His sensors showed empty space in all directions. There were no human ships anywhere near them. He thought the war would be boring. Humans were probably hiding behind their planet, too afraid to come out. Then something impossible happened. The empty space around the fleet suddenly filled with human ships. Huge carriers appeared from nowhere. They were so close that the Vryn could almost touch them. The carriers began releasing thousands of small objects. They moved so fast that the Vryn sensors could barely track them. Commander Zalthor jumped from his seat. He screamed orders to raise shields, but it was too late. The small objects were already hitting his ships. They were moving at almost the speed of light. When they hit, they released energy like nuclear bombs. A grain of sand moving that fast could punch a hole through a battleship. These were not grains of sand. They were chunks of metal the size of a fist. When they hit Vryn ships, the ships simply exploded. 1 second, a mighty warship was there. The next second, it was a cloud of burning gas and metal pieces. All around the fleet, ships were dying. Thousands of them. The Vryn tried to shoot back, but the human carriers were already gone. They had disappeared as quickly as they appeared. The stealth technology made them invisible again. The Vryn were shooting at ghosts. In 15 minutes, the Vryn's second fleet was destroyed. 6,000 ships were gone. 2,000 badly damaged ships tried to run away. It was the worst military disaster in Vryn history. And it was happening at the same time in dozens of other places. At Zenthar Prime, the Council's main shipyard, alarms suddenly screamed. Workers looked up to see human warships appearing in orbit. The Ghost Fleet had arrived. Before the station's defenses could respond, human ships opened fire. Particle beams cut through the shipyard's structure. Missiles tore apart ships that were still being built. On the flagship of the Third Council Defense Fleet, Admiral Thexval watched his screens in horror. Strange signals were appearing throughout his formation. Then human soldiers started materializing on his ships. They were just appearing out of thin air inside secure areas. These were the super soldiers from Project Darwin. They wore black armor that seemed alive. They moved faster than any normal human. When Council security tried to stop them, the human soldiers were already behind them. They struck with incredible force. Within minutes, the human soldiers had captured the bridge of every major ship in the fleet. Admiral Thexval found himself staring at a human soldier who stood in his command center. The soldier's face was hidden behind a black helmet. The admiral tried to give orders, but his communications were dead. The soldier spoke in a calm voice. He said the ship was now under human control. He told the admiral to order his crew to stand down or they would all die. In the Council's main communication hub, chaos erupted. All their networks were under attack. Computer systems were crashing. Viruses were spreading through every station and ship. Human hackers had broken through security that the Council thought was perfect. Messages could not be sent. Orders could not be received. The entire Council military was blind and deaf, but the worst was yet to come. Millions of small drones filled the space around Council positions. They moved in perfect coordination, like a swarm of angry insects. Each drone was small and cheap, but there were so many of them that they overwhelmed the Council's defenses. Council ships tried to shoot them down. They destroyed thousands of drones, but for every one they killed, 10 more took its place. The drones got through the defenses and attached to ship hulls. Then they exploded. Small explosions by themselves, but thousands of them happening at once tore ships apart from the outside. The Council military had never seen warfare like this. For hundreds of years, they had fought wars in a specific way. Fleets would meet in open space. They would line up and shoot at each other with energy weapons. The stronger fleet would win. It was predictable. It was organized. It was civilized. Human warfare was none of those things. Humans used tricks and deception. They attacked from stealth. They hacked computers. They used weapons that traveled at impossible speeds. They teleported soldiers directly onto enemy ships. They sent swarms of cheap drones instead of expensive ships. They fought in ways the Council had never imagined. In the Council chamber, Lord Krathos received the reports. His face turned from purple to almost black with rage. His 4 eyes burned with fury. He could not believe what he was hearing. How could primitive humans be doing this? Where had they gotten these weapons? How had they hidden such a large fleet? His military commanders gave him the numbers. In just 48 hours, the Council had lost 15,000 ships. That was 30% of their entire military force. Shipyards were burning. Communication networks were destroyed. Whole fleets had surrendered without firing a shot because human super soldiers had captured their command staff. Lord Krathos slammed his fist on the table. He demanded an immediate counterattack. He ordered his remaining fleets to gather and strike at Earth itself. If they destroyed the human homeworld, the war would be over. But other Council members were not so sure anymore. The Zethian ambassador stood up. His silver skin was pale with fear. He said they should consider peace. He said humanity had proven to be far more dangerous than anyone thought. Perhaps they should negotiate. Lord Krathos turned on him with fury. He said the Vryn would never negotiate with humans. The Council had declared humans must submit or die. If they backed down now, every other species in the galaxy would see the Council as weak. No, they must fight until humanity was crushed completely. The Council began to argue among themselves. 5 species wanted to make peace. 3 species, including the Vryn, wanted to continue the war. 4 species were undecided. The unity of the council was cracking. Humanity had done in 2 days what no enemy had done in 1,000 years. They had made the council doubt itself. On Earth, Admiral Wright watched the battle reports with satisfaction. The first strike had gone better than he hoped. But he knew this was just the beginning. The council still had over 30,000 ships left. They would reorganize. They would adapt. The real test was coming. He called a meeting with his senior officers. He told them to prepare for the next phase. The council would come at them with everything they had. The time for surprise attacks was over. Now would come the hard fighting. Now would come the real war. But as he looked at the star maps, the Admiral allowed himself a small smile. The council had thought humanity was weak. They had thought humans were primitive. They had learned the first lesson the hard way. Now they would learn the second lesson. When humans fought for their survival, they would never stop, never surrender, never give up. The galaxy was about to witness what human determination really meant. The council gathered its remaining forces at Zenthar Prime. 30,000 warships assembled in orbit around the capital world. It was the largest fleet ever brought together in galactic history. The ships came from all 12 council races. They filled the space around the planet like a metal cloud. Lord Krathos stood on the bridge of his super battleship, the Eternal Victory. It was the biggest warship in the galaxy, 5 miles long and armed with enough weapons to destroy a moon. Around him, his commanders prepared for battle. They were determined to restore the honor of the council. This time they would be ready for human tricks. The plan was simple but strong. The council fleet would advance in tight formation toward human space. Their massive numbers would overwhelm any defense. If humanity tried their stealth attacks, the dense formation would mean human ships could not move between them. The council would use their advantage in numbers to crush humanity. Admiral Wright knew the council fleet was coming. His sensors had been tracking the buildup for days. He gathered his forces for the defense. 8,000 human ships against 30,000 council ships. The numbers were against humanity. But numbers were not everything. The 2 fleets met in the space near Zenthar Prime. When the human fleet appeared, Lord Krathos laughed. He could see how badly outnumbered the humans were. He gave the order to attack. The council ships began moving forward in their tight formation. Human ships opened fire first. Particle beams and missiles shot across the darkness of space. They hit the council formation and destroyed dozens of ships. But the council kept coming. For every ship that died, 10 more took its place. The sheer size of their fleet was overwhelming. The council returned fire. Thousands of energy weapons lit up the space between the fleets. Human ships started taking damage. Their shields flickered and failed. Ships began to explode. Admiral Wright watched his forces taking losses. But he stayed calm. He had a plan. He gave an order. Suddenly, human science vessels moved to specific positions in the council formation. These were not warships. They were specially designed research vessels. Each one carried a device that humanity had spent decades developing. It was time to reveal Project Prometheus. The science vessels activated their devices. In the middle of the council formation, reality itself began to twist. Tiny black holes appeared. They were no bigger than a marble, but they had the gravity of a mountain. Space warped around them. Council ships that were near the black holes found themselves being pulled off course. Ships crashed into each other. Some were pulled directly into the black holes and crushed into nothing. Others were flung away by the gravitational chaos. The tight formation that was supposed to be the council's strength became their weakness. Lord Krathos screamed orders to spread out. But the council fleet was too big and too close together. The chaos spread through their formation like a wave. Captains tried to avoid the black holes and crashed into other ships. Thousands of vessels became tangled in a massive collision. While the council fleet was in chaos, Admiral Wright struck. He was connected directly to Earth's quantum computer network through implants in his brain. This let him process information faster than any normal person. He could see the entire battlefield at once. He could give orders to thousands of ships instantly. Human ships moved with perfect coordination. They struck at weak points in the council formation. They destroyed command ships. They targeted supply vessels. Every move was calculated for maximum effect. The council commanders could not keep up. By the time they gave an order, the situation had already changed. The battle raged for 6 days. It was the longest space battle in history. Ships from both sides filled the space around Xanthar Prime with debris. Explosions lit up the darkness constantly. Thousands of people died every hour. The scale of destruction was unimaginable. On the fourth day, Admiral Wright's flagship was hit by enemy fire. The ship shook violently. Fires broke out on multiple decks. Half the crew was killed instantly. But the Admiral survived. He refused to leave his post. He kept giving orders even as his ship burned around him. By the sixth day, both fleets were exhausted. The Council still had more ships, but they had lost over half their force. 15,000 Council ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost 3,000 ships. But the humans still fought with the same intensity as the first day. Lord Krathos looked at the tactical displays and felt something he had never felt before: fear. His mighty fleet was being beaten by these primitive humans. How was this possible? His commanders told him they needed reinforcements. But there were no reinforcements. This was everything the Council had. Then Admiral Wright made his final move. He had been saving one weapon for this moment. He called it the Defiance Protocol. A science vessel, the UHNS Defiance, had been positioned near Xanthar Prime's sun since before the battle began. Now it was time to use it. The Defiance activated its stellar manipulation device. The technology was experimental and dangerous. It forced the star to release a massive burst of energy in a specific direction. A beam of solar plasma shot out from the sun like a weapon. It was aimed directly at the Council's reserve fleet. 5,000 Council ships were waiting in reserve. They had been held back to finish off humanity after the main battle, but they were positioned in the path of the plasma beam. The wave of stellar fire hit them at a significant fraction of light speed. There was no time to run, no time to raise shields. The ships simply evaporated in the heat of a star. On the Eternal Victory, Lord Krathos watched his entire reserve fleet die in seconds. 5,000 ships, 50,000 crew members, gone. The stellar beam faded, leaving nothing but empty space where his ships had been. The Council fleet broke. Captains started to retreat without orders. Some ships surrendered. Others just ran. The formation fell apart completely. Lord Krathos tried to rally them, but his commanders were not listening anymore. They had seen enough. Humanity had turned a star into a weapon. What else were they capable of? Admiral Wright did not pursue the fleeing ships. His fleet was too damaged. But he had won. The Battle of Xanthar Prime was over. The Council had lost 2/3 of their military power. The survivors fled back to their home worlds in shame. In the Council chamber, 5 species immediately voted to seek peace with humanity. They had seen enough destruction. But Lord Krathos and the Vryn refused to accept defeat. He stood before the Council and declared that the war would continue. He would personally lead a strike against Earth itself. If he could destroy the human homeworld, the war would be won. Some Council members tried to argue with him. They said humanity had proven too strong. They should negotiate. But Lord Krathos would not listen. His pride had been wounded. His people had been humiliated. He gathered the remaining Vryn fleet, 10,000 ships crewed by loyal followers. He did not ask permission from the Council. He simply left. His plan was simple. He would destroy Earth and everyone on it. Then the Council would have to accept his leadership again. He did not realize that this decision would lead to the most terrible action of the entire war. He did not know that humanity had one more weapon they had never used. A weapon so horrible that even humans feared it. But they would use it if their homeworld was threatened. They would use Project Ragnarok. Lord Krathos gathered his secret armada far from the Council's eyes. 10,000 Vryn warships waited in the darkness of space. These were not official Council forces. These were ships crewed by Vryn loyalists who believed in their Lord's vision. They would attack Earth and end this war once and for all. The plan was a suicide mission. Many of his ships would die, but if they could reach Earth and destroy the human homeworld, it would be worth it. Without Earth, humanity would collapse. The colonies would surrender. The Vryn would be seen as the saviors of the Council. Lord Krathos would restore his people's honor. But Lord Krathos made a critical mistake. He believed humanity's intelligence network had been destroyed in the war. He was wrong. Human spies had infiltrated deep into Council systems. They had learned about his secret plan within hours of him making it. On Earth, Admiral Wright received the report in his damaged command center. His officers told him that a Vryn fleet was preparing to strike at Earth. 10,000 ships. They would arrive in 3 days. The Admiral's face became hard as stone. He called an emergency meeting with Earth's civilian government. In the government chamber, the President of Earth sat with his advisors. Ambassador Sarah Chen was there too. She had returned from the council to help coordinate the war effort. Admiral Wright stood before them and explained the situation. A massive Vryn fleet was coming to destroy Earth. They had options to intercept it, but the enemy might break through. Then the Admiral said something that made everyone in the room go silent. He said there was another option. They could use Project Ragnarok. They could strike at the Vryn homeworld as a deterrent. If Lord Krathos knew his home planet would die, he would turn back. It was the only way to guarantee Earth's safety. Ambassador Chen stood up. Her voice shook with emotion. She said they could not do this. The Vryn homeworld had 4 billion people. Most of them were innocent. They had families and children. If humanity destroyed that world, they would be committing genocide. They would become the very monsters the Council feared. The Admiral looked at her with tired eyes. He said he understood. He did not want to do this either. But what choice did they have? If the Vryn fleet reached Earth, billions of humans would die. His job was to protect Earth. He would do whatever was necessary to save humanity's homeworld. The debate went on for hours. Some leaders agreed with the ambassador. Others agreed with the Admiral. Finally, the President made his decision. He said the safety of Earth came first. If they did nothing and Earth was destroyed, humanity would end. But if they acted, humanity would survive. He gave the order. Authorize Project Ragnarok. Ambassador Chen left the room with tears in her eyes. She knew this was the wrong choice, but she also knew why they made it. When your family's life is threatened, you will do terrible things to save them. That was human nature. It was also humanity's curse. Admiral Wright returned to his command center and gave the orders. Stealth ships that had been positioned near Vryn space began to move. Each ship carried relativistic weapons. These were massive chunks of metal that would be accelerated to nearly the speed of light. When they hit a planet, the energy release would be unimaginable. At the same time, Earth's remaining battle fleet moved to intercept Lord Krathos. They needed to slow him down. Give him time to receive the message and turn back. Because the message was about to be sent. A message the Vryn Lord would never forget. The transmission went out on all frequencies. It was addressed to Lord Krathos personally. Admiral Wright's face appeared on every Vryn screen. He spoke with a cold, flat voice. He said the Vryn fleet must turn back immediately. If they did not, the Vryn homeworld would be destroyed. He said this was not a bluff. Humanity would do what was necessary to survive. On the bridge of the eternal victory, Lord Krathos listened to the message. Then he started to laugh. He told his officers that humans were desperate. They were trying to scare him with empty threats. No species would actually destroy a populated world. It would be considered the ultimate war crime. The humans were bluffing. His fleet continued toward Earth. Lord Krathos was so certain of victory that he did not even bother to check on his homeworld. That was his second critical mistake, because the human weapons were already on their way. The Vryn homeworld was a beautiful planet. Purple oceans and red forests covered the surface. Cities of crystal towers reached toward the sky. 4 billion Vryn lived there. They had no idea what was about to happen. Their defense satellites detected objects approaching at incredible speed. By the time they realized what they were, it was too late. The first relativistic projectile hit the northern continent. The impact released as much energy as the asteroid that killed Earth's dinosaurs. A fireball rose into the atmosphere. The shock wave flattened everything for 1,000 miles. But that was just the beginning. More projectiles followed, 5 impacts, 10 impact, 20 impacts. Each one hit with the force of a planet killer. The Vryn homeworld's crust cracked. Magma erupted from deep underground. The atmosphere began to burn away from the heat. Tectonic plates shattered. The beautiful planet was being torn apart. In the cities, Vryn people ran in panic. But there was nowhere to run. The ground split open beneath them. Fire rained from the sky. The air became too hot to breathe. Within hours, the surface of the planet was completely uninhabitable. Within days, the planet would be nothing but a dead rock floating in space. Lord Krathos received the reports from his home world. At first, he did not believe them. This had to be a mistake, but more messages came in. Then the messages stopped. All communication from the Vryn homeworld went silent. Forever silent, the Vryn Lord stood on his bridge in shock. His home world, his family, his entire civilization, gone, destroyed, 4 billion of his people dead, and it was his fault. His arrogance had brought this doom. He had believed humans were bluffing. He had been wrong. Terribly, horribly wrong. He gave the order to retreat. His fleet turned away from Earth, but Admiral Wright did not let them escape. The human fleet pursued them. Every Vryn ship was hunted down and destroyed. No mercy, no prisoners. The Admiral had given his orders. Lord Krathos's fleet would not survive. Not a single ship. The Eternal Victory was the last ship to die. Human warships surrounded it. They fired until the great battleship was nothing but burning wreckage. Lord Krathos died on his bridge, watching his dream of Vryn supremacy burn around him. His last thought was regret. If only he had listened. If only he had not been so arrogant. Back in the council chamber, the remaining members gathered in emergency session. They had all seen what humanity did to the Vryn homeworld. They had all seen the complete destruction of Lord Krathos's fleet. They were terrified. Humanity had proven they would do anything to survive, even commit genocide. Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to the council chamber one last time. But now she was not begging for membership. Now she was delivering an ultimatum. She stood in the center of the room and looked at each council member. Her voice was cold and hard. She said the council had called humans primitive. They had murdered innocent colonists. They had declared that humanity must submit or die. Now they knew the truth. Humanity would never submit. Humanity would never surrender. And if any species ever threatened Earth again, humanity would show no restraint. They would bring extinction. The council voted immediately, not for peace, not for a treaty. They voted to give humanity full membership in the council. More than that, they gave humanity a permanent seat on the High Council. The vote was unanimous. No debate, no discussion. Every species simply agreed. They were too afraid to do anything else, but the victory felt hollow. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. Humanity had survived. They had proven themselves to the galaxy. But some people did not celebrate. Some people thought about the 4 billion Vryn who died. Some people wondered if the price of survival was too high. Admiral Wright sat alone in his quarters. He looked at pictures of the Vryn homeworld before it died. Beautiful cities, families walking in parks, children playing, all gone now, because of his orders. He had saved Earth, but he had destroyed an entire world. Was he a hero or a monster? He did not know anymore. Ambassador Chen visited him. She sat down without saying anything. They both knew what the other was thinking. They had won the war, but they had lost something important. They had lost their innocence. Humanity had proven it could be just as terrible as any alien empire. Maybe more terrible. Because humans would do absolutely anything to survive. The galaxy had learned its lesson. It had learned that humanity was not weak. It had learned that human technology was more advanced than it appeared. It had learned that human military tactics were brutally effective. But most importantly, it had learned one final truth. When humanity was pushed to the edge of extinction, they would drag their enemies into the abyss with them. The Galactic Council had shuddered at humanity's power. But it was not just the weapons that scared them. It was the will to use those weapons. It was the absolute refusal to accept defeat. That was humanity's greatest strength and humanity's greatest curse, and now the whole galaxy knew it. Earth was safe. But the question remained, at what cost? And who had humanity become to achieve that safety? Those questions would haunt them for generations to come.